First guest is Kelly Bernal, who has previously held roles at Gap, Banana Republic, and Land's End, among others. She is currently the Vice President of Merchandising Strategy and Growth at Balsam Brands, a global leader in e-commerce for holiday and home decor. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks, Brett, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited to talk to you and learn more about the process and the role that you take. So speaking of starting off, if you want to touch on this with your role in mind specifically, how would you describe a role in merchandising?
Ooh, good question. A role in merchandising. Merchants are really interesting because they get to bridge kind of the art and science of products, starting with customer and trends and what's happening and getting an understanding of the market and who they're trying to serve and bring products to market for. Um, but then there's also fun to create. What does that look like? What kind of vision do you set? Would they even like that from you? How does that tie to your brand? And so those are a lot of questions you have to ask yourself and you're a part of, and you may not activate every single portion of that journey of the product journey, but it does start with the strategy and how you think something will work for a customer. So that becomes a lot of fun on the merchandising side and what people love, and everybody wants to be a merchant, um, and work with design and do great things. But there's also the business side of it, which is, the financial planning and understanding how those products would help drive the business forward. And so, it's kind of finding a way to balance both of those, because you don't want to get to a place where there's so much data, it's so overwhelming. You've got all this customer data, you've got all this financial data. How do I balance that with bringing the right product and having sometimes that gut instinct of really driving the business and knowing what's right and feeling what's right, with coupling that with the data and how to bring that into the market and balance. And then there's the marketing aspect. How do you bring it to the customer, right? So you don't drive those pieces 100% depending on where you work, but you're a part of that process and you bring those teams together to help, initiate and bring something to the customer that they love or that they tell you they don't love, and you want to figure out what that looks like.
Oh, interesting to hear about it. I've never heard it described as like a balance, like you said, between the different aspects of financing, marketing, merchandising. That's really a really interesting and kind of new take on it that I've heard. I love that answer. So with so many students right now looking for internships and jobs, I wanted to kind of know with the interview process and just applications, what do you look for when hiring?
That's another great question. Um, I think it's interesting because the market has evolved so much over time, right? Technology has changed some of the things that you need, and we're in an age where everybody's a digital native now coming into the workforce. But I think something that you can't not have, and that's really important, is the curiosity, right? And it's curiosity to learn and to grow and to kind of, you know, wonder what's happening. Why is that like that? How do we change that? How can I be a part of that? Because that's a starting point. And I think everything kind of ties to that. I think in some ways you kind of say, if I have that, then I can learn how to be a strategic thinker and use data and customer insights to drive decisions, or I can work with cross-functional teams and I can figure out how to be a good partner and how to help you know develop myself and become a leader. And then it shows that I'm adaptable and I can kind of evolve with the amount of change that's happening in the world, that happens in our business, that happens in any business, right? And how do you adapt to that? Because change is real, it happens all the time, and if you're not curious, you could end up running that place of like, I'm so stringent, I need it to be this one way. But you know what, it can't always work that way. So what do? You can't flex, you become disengaged. It's harder for you to become a part of the process, and you get frustrated, then you don't like what you do, and that's hard too. um And then I think there's also passion that comes from that, right? Really loving what you do. And, you spend so much time doing the work that you do in your offices with your teams and with people that you really have to enjoy it. And because there are times when it's going to be hard and it's not going to be fun and you're not going to love that so much. But across the whole timeline of what you're doing, you should love what you're doing. And if you don't, then maybe it's a good opportunity to figure out what it is you love and start to ask yourself different questions.
That is a great piece of advice for students, I think. I feel like across everyone I've heard from, curiosity and passion are the two most important things, and not just like the interview process, but throughout your career as a whole, like throughout every single process. I think that's a really great piece of advice for students. I love that. Kind of want to go back into your role specifically with your career path and journey. If you could tell me about a successful project or initiative, and what did you learn from it throughout your entire career path?
Absolutely. I think I've been fortunate enough to have great experiences where we've had success in the business and we've also not had success in business decisions too. So that's helpful. But I think, one that I'm just really proud of was, when I was at Levi's, um, I worked for the Dockers brand, which was recently sold. But we did something different that brand hadn't done in a while. And it was part of their heritage. It was part of their history, and we just didn't tap into it. And we created product that went into the market, and it was one of the biggest volume sales that we had commercialized in the business. And it was all leading with innovation, and it was so collaborative, and it was such a process that started with a little idea and moved and became something different, and it was a challenge. Someone challenged us, and it took many teams across all functions and then the executive leadership team to be a part of a process that brought something that was really great and part of a foundation for the future of that brand at the time. And I'm really proud of that. I loved that we worked collaboratively. I liked that it wasn't easy. It was hard. But it was so engaging and it was so interesting to hear from customers and to kind of go through a process that, brought something new to the market to a customer in a specific demographic need. And just see how much energy that had. It was really, really exciting.
Kind of going back to a piece of advice for students, I want to know what advice would you give students preparing for a career in retail?
Be open to change. Be interested in whatever area of retail you're going into, because it is ever changing and evolving. And really, you know, don't forget about your customer, because as much as you love something, it's really about what they love. And you can work for brands that you are connected to, that you have an affinity for, but you may not at some point in time. And so how do you dig deep to figure out how you serve that customer in that space? And how do you take the knowledge you have and apply it to something, like a tire or a bed frame or a mattress? They're all great products, but they may not be as exciting as a piece of clothes that you feel like give you a personal style, or something you're going to put on your bed, or any category for that matter, a drink, right, that you drink it that gives you energy and is exciting and engaging. Sometimes you don't have those shiny things. So what are the things that you can bring to the table to do that, while knowing that it's going to change? Everything evolves, trends happen, trends are real, and things come and go. And so how do you keep yourself going through that process, knowing that it will change, and what can you bring to the table in a new way?
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a very common thing again too, to hear how change is such a huge thing in the retail industry and how every day you kind of go in not knowing exactly what to expect. So I think that's a very great piece of advice for students to know. Yeah, so I wanted to also ask, as students are kind of thinking about what they want to do in the retail field, what path exactly would align with them. In your experience, what key skills and experiences have been most valuable in helping you succeed leading merchandising?
Great question. I think some of it ties to, you know, what you need to do in the retail landscape. You know, some of it is that curiosity, some of it is the data and analytics. And that's actually something that, you know, for me was as a learn something I had to learn. I wasn't, you know, interested in finance and math and anything. And so it was something that, you know, I had really early on in my career, a leader said, you know, you need to know more on the business side in order to be successful in these roles, because it is a business and you have to figure out and know how to drive profitability, how to manage the numbers, how to you know, make sure that the business is delivering on the financial needs of the organization in totality. And it was one of the best pieces of advice that I got as a little assistant, you know, merchant in my early in my career. um, because while you may know you need it, that was something that I really had to take time to and energy and effort early on to understand. It's interesting because I loved products, so I was all excited about doing the fun things, and I was like, "Oh, I'll do this over here." But you really had to find the balance between the two, and that's part of the art and science of merchandising and product. And so I think that's a piece of it. I also think another piece is really understanding, you know, how to build a relationship with someone, because so much of what we do is relational, it's collaborative, it's a partnership. It's so easy. And I find this in multiple places, right? And different teams and different personality types. It's easy to say, oh, that function didn't do something. Oh, you know, that wasn't on me. I didn't do that. But the reality is, if you're working as a team, everybody's accountable, everybody's responsible. And while a function may own a task, how do you take ownership together? And to do that, you have to have those relationships. You have to spend time working together and really knowing people and understanding them. It's not just about surface level, it's about, you know, them being a part of, you know, your everyday in a way, like it's like family, right? But it's not family, because it is a business and you have to kind of, you know, understand that too. um but I think that that's something that's important, right? Because you have to be able to connect with them, ask for help, ask for questions, push them to say, we have to try something different. We have to move in a different direction. There's some influencing that needs to happen. And sometimes it's influencing without authority. It's influencing because you're not the final decision maker. So you have to put something out there and you have to be okay that it's going to happen in a way. It may not be exactly how you want it to happen, but sometime in your moment in time, you'll get to have it be that for you, where you can have it happen the way you want it to. But just being able to do those things and adapt to that and understand how to keep those connections moving is really important.
Yeah, I love that was such a great answer. I love that. Very good to know all important things again. I agree 100%. Lastly, I wanted to ask, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
I would tell my 20-year-old self to remember to always have fun, to keep going and to keep growing, and, you know, to just enjoy what you're doing even when it gets hard. It You just have to. Don't take it so seriously.
I love it. That's great. So important to remember too throughout all aspects of life, I feel like. All right. Well, thank you so, so much, Kelly. That was awesome. It was so good to hear about your role and insights. And I think you gave some great pieces of advice for students to hear from, looking into either what career path they want to take and also the interviewing and application process that's coming up soon. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Brett, so much. It was great. I appreciate you.